I never thought a simple phone call could unravel my entire life. Started on a rainy Tuesday night in late October, the kind of Seattle rain that never really stops, just pauses to catch its breath before pouring down again in sheets that turn the streets into glistening rivers. I live on the 12th floor of a mid-rise apartment building in Capitol Hill, one bedroom, one bathroom, with rent that eats up half my paycheck from the software company where I spend my days debugging code and staring at screens until my eyes ache. My name is Alex Harlan. I'm 38 years old, single, no kids, no pets. Just me, a coffee maker that's always brewing something strong and black, and a view of wet rooftops stretching out toward the distant neon signs of downtown, all blurred by the relentless fog rolling in off Puget Sound. That night, I was slouched on the worn leather couch in my gray sweatpants and an old college hoodie, mindlessly scrolling through work emails I had no intention of answering until morning, when the clock on my phone ticked over to 12:00 exactly and the screen lit up with the words blocked caller. I almost ignored it. Late-night calls are usually nothing but spam, telemarketers peddling extended warranties, or maybe a wrong number from someone dialing in a drunken haze. Sometimes it's an old friend from college I haven't spoken to in years, calling to reminisce about times I'd rather forget. But something made me swipe to answer, maybe boredom from another evening spent alone, or perhaps a subconscious pull I couldn't quite explain. The line crackled for half a second, a static hiss that raised the hairs on my arms, and then a voice came through, soft and achingly familiar, impossibly familiar. It was my mother. Alex, she said, in that exact way she always said it when I was a child, in trouble, gentle but with an undercurrent of firmness, laced with that faint Georgia drawl she never fully lost even after 3 decades in the Pacific Northwest. Your father isn't who you think he is. I froze right there on the couch, my thumb hovering over the end button like it was frozen in place. My heart started doing that irregular thud it does when panic sets in, a rhythm that echoes in my ears and makes my chest tighten. Mom died 10 years ago. Ovarian cancer diagnosed too late, the kind that spreads silently until it's too far gone. She was gone in just 7 months. I was there in the hospice room, holding her thin, cold hand while the machines beeped slower and slower, until they flatlined into that endless tone that signals the end. I heard her last ragged breath, saw the light leave her eyes. There is no mistaking death when you sit with it that close, when it stares back at you from the face of someone you love. Pause. So this couldn't be her. It had to be a recording, a cruel deepfake cooked up by some hacker with too much time on their hands. Someone playing a very specific, very sick joke designed to tear open old wounds. I managed to croak out, "Who is this?" My voice barely above a whisper, before the line went dead with a click that echoed in the silent room. Pause. I sat there staring at the dark screen for what felt like minutes, the rain tapping insistently against the window panes like impatient fingernails drumming on glass. I got up and poured myself a whiskey. Not the good stuff I save for special occasions. The cheap bourbon I keep in the cabinet for nights like this, when the world feels a little too heavy. 2 fingers in a tumbler, then 3, the amber liquid swirling as I paced the living room, my bare feet cold against the laminate floor that creaked under my weight. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional splash of a car tire cutting through puddles 12 stories below on the street. I replayed the voice in my head over and over, dissecting it like one of my work codes. The exact way she said my name, with that slight emphasis on the A. The tiny catch in her throat, the one she got when she was emotional or holding back tears. It was perfect. Too perfect to be random. Pause. I opened my laptop on the coffee table, my fingers flying across the keys as I searched voice cloning AI, deepfake phone calls. Pages upon pages of results popped up, articles about how technology can replicate anyone's speech with just a few seconds of audio sample. Companies offering the service for pennies per minute. All you need is 30 seconds of recording, and boom, you have a ghost on the line. Mom had plenty of samples out there, old voicemails I never had the heart to delete from my phone, home videos digitized and stored on a hard drive gathering dust in the closet. Anyone with a bit of determination could have gotten hold of them if they really tried. Pause. But why me? I had no enemies that I knew of.
No bitter exes who hated me enough to dig that deep. No money worth extorting. Just an ordinary life that suddenly didn't feel so ordinary anymore, like the ground had shifted under my feet without warning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling fan spinning its lazy circles in the dark, the blades cutting through the air with a soft whoosh that did nothing to drown out the thoughts racing through my mind. I listened for the phone to ring again, my body tense under the sheets, every creak of the building settling, sounding like footsteps in the hallway outside. It didn't ring. Not that night. But the next night it did. Midnight sharp, as if programmed by some invisible clock. Same blocked number lighting up the screen. This time I answered without hesitation, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to admit. "Stop calling me," I said, trying to sound firm but coming off desperate. Her voice answered calmly, almost kindly, as if scolding a child. "He hid the letters, Alex, in the attic of the old house on Maple Lane. Go look before it's too late." Pause, then silence. Click, the line dead again. The old house. My parents' house in Bellevue, the one I grew up in, with its white siding, blue shutters, and the big maple tree in the front yard that dropped crimson leaves every fall like the tree was bleeding out its colors. I hadn't driven by since we sold it 2 years ago after Dad's heart attack took him suddenly in his sleep. The place held too many memories, good and bad, and I couldn't bear to see it owned by strangers, their lives overriding ours. Now this voice was sending me back there like some specter in a horror movie, pointing the way to buried secrets. Pause, I told myself it was nonsense. A coincidence or a glitch in some automated system. But the next day at work, I couldn't focus. The code on my screen blurred into meaningless lines, my mind wandering back to the call every few minutes. My manager pinged me on Slack, asking if I was okay, if I needed to take a sick day. I lied, said I had a migraine coming on, the kind that pounds behind your eyes and makes light hurt. Pause, that evening, I drove east across the Lake Washington floating bridge, the 520, traffic light for once, the rain heavy enough to make the wipers thump like a heartbeat against the windshield. The city lights reflected off the water below, distorted and shimmering. The new owners were surprised when I knocked on the door, standing there in the drizzle with my jacket collar turned up. A young couple, maybe in their late 20s, with a toddler clinging to the wife's leg, peeking out curiously. I mumbled something awkward about family keepsakes possibly left behind in the move, an old photo album that my mom had cherished with pictures from my childhood. They were kind about it, the husband nodding understandingly, the wife offering me a towel to dry off. They let me in without much question. The house smelled different now, like fresh paint and someone else's dinner cooking, garlic and herbs, maybe pasta sauce simmering on the stove. Nothing like Mom's lavender candles that she burned every evening or Dad's faint scent of aftershave that lingered in the air after he left for work. Pause, they pointed me to the attic access in the hallway ceiling, the same pull-down ladder that creaked when it unfolded, just like it did when I was a kid sneaking up there to play. I climbed up alone, the flashlight from my phone beam cutting through the thick layer of dust motes floating in the stale air. Boxes were stacked everywhere, Christmas lights tangled in knots, old baby clothes that weren't from my family, rolls of insulation gathering cobwebs. I moved things carefully, my heart hammering in my chest, sweat beading on my forehead despite the chill. Just when I was about to give up and climb down, one floorboard near the far wall, under a stack of yellowed newspapers, felt loose under my foot. I pried it up with my car keys, the wood groaning in protest. Pause, underneath, wrapped in a faded plastic grocery bag from a store long since closed, was a bundle of envelopes tied together with brittle twine. Yellowed with age. Postmark stamped from 1987 to 1994. Addressed to Thomas Harlan in a careful, feminine cursive script. From Sarah. I sat on the attic floor, legs crossed like I did when I was 10, hiding up there with comic books, and read by the dim flashlight glow. They were love letters, passionate and desperate. Descriptions of secret meetings in cheap motels outside Tacoma, stolen afternoons when Dad was supposed to be at work conferences. Promises whispered in the dark. A pregnancy announced in one, dated 1988. "Our son will be born in March, Tom. You have to tell your wife. We can't keep living like this." Another from 1990. "Michael is walking now. He has your eyes, your smile. He asks about his daddy. What do I tell him?" My father had a son, a half-brother I never knew existed. Born when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. While Mom was raising me alone most days, cooking family dinners, driving me to soccer practice, helping with homework, Dad was out there living a double life, splitting his heart and his time. Pause, my hands shook so badly the paper rattled in my grip. I felt a wave of nausea rise up, a mix of betrayal, anger, sadness crashing over me all at once, making my vision blur with unshed tears. How could he do this? How could Mom not know? Or did she, and she chose to stay silent? I stuffed the letters back into the bag, thanked the couple downstairs with a forced smile, and drove home in silence, the radio off, the only sound the rhythmic swish of wipers and the pounding of my heart. The letters sat on the passenger seat like a silent accusation. When midnight came that night, the phone rang as expected. I answered, my voice steady for the first time. "I found them," I said. The voice, Mom's voice, sounded almost relieved, a sigh escaping before she spoke. "Good. Now you understand the beginning, but there's more. Michael is alive and he knows about you. He wants what's his by right. Pause, I pressed for more. Who are you, really? For the first time, a soft laugh came through, the same light chuckle she used when I tried to lie as a kid about breaking a vase or sneaking cookies. Someone who still cares, Alex, more than you know. Click, the line dead. The next weeks dissolved into a blur of obsession and creeping dread. I started keeping a notebook on the nightstand, jotting down dates, times, the exact words from each call in shaky handwriting. I recorded them on my laptop using a voice app, played them back at half speed during the day, listening for any artifacts, glitches, or tells that proved it was synthetic, not real. Nothing. The audio was flawless, seamless. Pause, I barely ate anything solid. Coffee replaced breakfast. Lunch was a granola bar if I remembered. Dinner a microwaved frozen meal that tasted like cardboard. I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks, my clothes hanging loose, my face gaunt in the mirror. Colleagues at work started asking questions during virtual meetings, their concerned faces pixelated on screen. I avoided turning on my camera, said I had COVID lingering, the long kind that saps your energy. Pause nights, I took long walks around the neighborhood, hood pulled up against the rain, puddles reflecting streetlights as I tried to clear my head. Every shadow in an alley looked like someone watching. Every car idling at a light felt like it was following me. Paranoia starts quiet, a whisper in the back of your mind, then it grows loud, a constant hum that drowns out everything else. I dove into public records online, spending hours on genealogy sites and state databases. Sarah Marie Harlan, née Thompson, died in 1995 in a single-vehicle accident on I-90, car veering off the road into a ravine. Obituary mentioned a son, Michael, age 15 at the time, survived by her brother Robert. No father listed on the birth certificate, but the timing lined up perfectly with the letters. After Sarah's death, Michael went into foster care, bouncing from home to home. I found him on LinkedIn of all places. Michael Harlan, auto mechanic in Portland, Oregon. His profile photo showed a man in his 40s, same square jaw as Dad, same deep-set eyes that seemed to stare right through the screen. Pause, I stared at that photo for hours, zooming in on details, comparing it to old pictures of Dad in my phone's gallery. My brother. My half-brother. A stranger who shared my blood, my history, but lived in the shadows of it. The word brother felt foreign on my tongue, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to face. The calls kept coming, relentless as the Seattle rain. Each one revealed a little more, like breadcrumbs leading deeper into the woods. Details only Mom could possibly know, things buried in the past. Remember the red fire truck you loved until you were 7, the one with the ladder that broke, she said one night. You cried for days until I fixed it with tape. Correct, every detail. Another time, remember how I used to sing, "You Are My Sunshine" when you had a fever, rubbing your back until you fell asleep? Spot on. I tested her, throwing out questions like traps. What happened the day I broke my arm at 12? The voice described it perfectly. The bike crash on the hill near home, the hospital smell of antiseptic, the green cast I wore for 6 weeks, the way Dad brought me ice cream afterward and looked guilty, avoiding Mom's eyes. Pause, I cried then, hot tears streaming down my face in the dark apartment. First time I'd wept since Mom's funeral. Because if it wasn't her, really her, somehow, then who had all these intimate memories? And if it was her, how? Was this some afterlife communication, a spirit reaching out, or just advanced tech mocking my grief? One night, the voice shifted tone, more urgent. Check the safe deposit box at First National Bank. The key is in the blue envelope from the lawyer after Dad died. Dad's lawyer. I still had the envelope in a drawer, unopened beyond the basics. The next morning, I called in sick to work and went to the bank, heart racing as I signed in and handed over the key. Box 347. Inside, more letters from Sarah, pleading ones near the end, bank statements showing monthly transfers from Dad to an account in her name for 15 years straight, and a revised will dated 6 months before Dad's death, leaving 50% of the estate to my son, Michael Harlan. The signature looked like Dad's, but shaky, as if signed during one of his bad days when the illness made his hands tremble. Pause, I sat in the bank's private viewing room, head in my hands, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees. My inheritance, the money from the house sale, the savings, the investments, was suddenly shared with a stranger. Half gone just like that. That afternoon, I drove to Portland on impulse, the highway stretching south through evergreen forests and misty valleys. I found the garage where Michael worked, parked across the street in a strip mall lot, and watched through the rain-streaked window. He was under a car hoist, lifting engines with ease, laughing with coworkers over some joke, wiping grease on a rag with calloused hands. He looked normal. Tired from hard labor, maybe a bit angry at the world, but human. Not the monster my mind had built him into. I didn't approach him. Couldn't find the words. Pause on the drive back as dusk fell and the headlights of oncoming cars pierced the gloom. The phone rang. Not midnight yet, but the voice was there. He's angry, Alex. He grew up with nothing while you had everything. A home, parents, stability. He blames you for it all. I hired a private investigator the next day, a grizzled guy named Frank I found online with good reviews. I gave him everything. The letters, the recordings saved on a USB, Michael's name and photo. Find out who he is, what he wants, if he's the one making these calls. Pause waiting for Frank's reports felt like waiting for a medical diagnosis, each day stretching longer, every hour filled with what-ifs. The calls continued, the voice now warning me of small things. Don't take the freeway tomorrow, take surface streets. I didn't, and later saw news of a 20-car pileup on I-5 due to hydroplaning. Coincidence? Maybe, but the fear settled deeper into my bones, a cold that no amount of whiskey could warm. Then the package arrived at my door, delivered anonymously, no sender label, just plain brown paper wrapped tight. I opened it cautiously on the kitchen table. Inside, an old Polaroid photo from 1999, me and Dad at Safico Field watching a Mariners game, grins on our faces. But Mom's face in the picture was scratched out violently with something sharp, like a key or a knife, leaving jagged lines where her smile used to be. A single typed sentence taped to the back. She never deserved him. Pause, I dropped it like it was on fire, my hands trembling. This wasn't just voices anymore, this was physical, tangible threat. I called the police, showed them the photo and the package. They took notes, bagged it for evidence, promised to check for prints. But no leads came back. The package was clean. I stopped leaving the apartment except for absolute necessities like groceries, peering out the peephole before opening the door. I installed more security, cameras in every corner, deadbolts reinforced, motion sensor lights that flooded the hallway with glare. I slept with a baseball bat beside the bed, jumping at every sound. Work fired me quietly after too many missed deadlines and no-shows, a severance email that I barely read. I didn't fight it. Savings would last a few months. Pause, the voice became my only constant companion, almost comforting in its eerie consistency. You're not alone, it said one night softly. I'm here to guide you through this. Weeks later, Frank the Pie called with his first report. Michael has a record. Assault charges from a bar fight 5 years ago, petty theft as a teen, bad temper from what his ex-coworkers say, no direct link to the calls yet. But get this, he visited your father in the nursing home 3 times in the last month of Dad's life. Staff remember him. He was angry, demanding to see the will, raising his voice. Pause, my stomach dropped like I was in freefall. Michael had been there, close enough to Dad to get voice samples, perhaps even record him secretly. I decided then that I had to meet him, no more hiding behind screens and reports. I drove south again, the road familiar now, knocking on the apartment door above the garage where he lived. He opened it shirtless, a towel draped around his neck, wafting from the bathroom. He saw me and froze, his eyes widening in recognition. You're him, he said, voice low and rough. The other son, come in. Pause, we talked for 3 hours on his sagging couch, beer cans accumulating on the coffee table as the night wore on. He told me about his childhood, the foster homes with strict rules and cold dinners, the beatings from one caregiver that left scars, running away at 16 to live on the streets until he got his GED and a mechanic job. How he tracked Dad down 5 years ago through old letters Sarah left behind. Confronted him in a park, demanded answers, money, acknowledgement. Dad gave him some cash over the years, then more, then stopped when the guilt or the money ran dry. Then Dad died. Pause, I didn't kill him, Michael said, his eyes meeting mine with a defiance that hid pain. But part of me wanted to, for all the years he ignored me. His phone rang then, blocked number. He answered on speaker, his face paling as a voice, Dad's voice, gruff and authoritative, came through. Michael, don't trust Alex, he'll take everything from you. Pause, we stared at each other across the table. Both phones now, both parents, both dead, both speaking to us from beyond. That was the moment everything shifted, the mystery no longer mine alone. The moment Michael's phone echoed with Dad's voice warning him not to trust me. The cramped apartment above the Portland garage suddenly felt suffocating. Pause, the single bare bulb overhead cast harsh shadows across the peeling wallpaper. The air thick with the smell of motor oil that had seeped up through the floorboards and the faint sourness of old beer can stacked in the corner. We stared at each other across the low coffee table littered with empty bottles, greasy takeout wrappers, and a half-eaten bag of chips. Michael's eyes were wide, pupils dilated in the dim light, his knuckles white around the neck of his beer. My own heart slammed against my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat, a dull, rhythmic thud that matched the distant bass thump of a neighbor's music leaking through the thin walls. "This isn't you?" I asked again, voice low, almost pleading. I needed to hear it a second time, needed the words to land solid so the rising panic wouldn't swallow me whole. He shook his head slowly, deliberately, the way a man does when he's trying not to scare something fragile. "I swear on my mother's grave, Alex, on Sarah's grave, I don't know the first thing about making voices sound like that. I'm good with wrenches and timing belts. Not whatever the hell this is." Pause. There was no evasion in his gaze, no telltale flicker. Just exhaustion etched deep into the lines around his eyes, the same exhaustion I saw in my own mirror every morning now. For the first time since the first blocked call in October, the terror didn't feel completely solitary. Someone else was hearing the dead speak too. We talked faster after that, the words tumbling out in hushed bursts like we were afraid the walls might be listening. Michael got up, opened the small dorm-style fridge that hummed like an old airplane, pulled out 2 more beers, cheap domestics with faded labels, and cracked them open with a lighter from his pocket. The hiss of escaping carbonation sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet room. He handed me one without asking if I wanted it. I took it. The cold glass felt grounding against my palm. Pause. He sat back down heavily, the couch springs groaning under his weight. "They started 4 months ago," he said, staring at the bottle instead of me. "Right after the obituary ran in that little Bellevue paper. At first I thought it was a bill collector I'd stiffed years back or one of those robot scams. Blocked the number. Changed my phone. Didn't matter. Midnight every night like someone set an alarm." Pause. He took a long swallow, Adam's apple working. Then the voice changed, became him. "Dad, same gravelly edge when he was pissed. Telling me you knew about me the whole time. That you'd been sitting on the money, laughing at the bastard brother who grew up eating government cheese while you had piano lessons and college funds." I winced. The image hurt more than it should have. "What else did it say?" I asked quietly. Michael rubbed the back of his neck, grease still embedded under his fingernails. "Personal shit. Stuff only he knew, like the fishing trip when I was 21. He showed up out of nowhere at the shop I was working at in Eugene. Said he wanted to make up for lost time. Took me up to Crescent Lake. We didn't catch a damn thing. Sat on the shore drinking warm beer, talking about nothing and everything. First time he ever said he was sorry without making excuses. The voice remembers every word we said that day. Even the part where I told him I hated him for leaving Mom to die alone." Pause. His voice cracked on the last sentence. He looked away, jaw working. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, letting the silence stretch. We pulled out a napkin from the greasy takeout bag on the table and started building a timeline with a stubby pencil Michael found under a couch cushion. My calls, October 22, first ring. His, June 15, roughly 4 months earlier. Overlap began the week I found the letters in the attic. Not coincidence. Design. Pause. That very night the calls arrived synchronized. Both phones vibrated at exactly 12:00:00 on the dot. I answered mine on speaker. Mom's voice, soft and maternal. "You're getting close to the truth now, Alex. Keep going, don't stop." Michael's phone crackled at the same instant. Dad's voice, stern and disappointed. "But watch your back, son. Someone close is going to betray you." The two voices overlapped, blending into an eerie, disjointed harmony that made the small hairs on my forearms rise. We stared at the phones like they were live grenades. Neither of us moved to hang up until the lines clicked dead on their own. "We trace this," Michael said, voice suddenly hard, decisive. No more waiting for the next ring like sitting ducks. He knew someone who could help. Raul, early 20s, skinny, always wearing the same black hoodie with the sleeves pushed up, worked part-time at the garage detailing cars and fixing busted laptops for extra cash on the side. We met him the next afternoon behind a strip mall off 82nd Avenue, rain drumming steadily on the corrugated metal awning above us, water dripping from the edges in silver ropes. Michael handed Raul the 2 USB drives we'd loaded with our call recordings. Raul plugged one into his battered gaming laptop, stickers peeling, keyboard worn shiny, slipped on over-ear headphones, and listened for a long minute without speaking. Pause. He pulled the headphones down around his neck. "This ain't budget deepfake crap from some app," he said, voice low so passersby wouldn't overhear. "High-end synthesis. They trained a model on clean, long samples, hours of audio at least. Needs good source material to get the breathing, the little pauses, the throat catches this natural. Whoever did this had access to personal tapes or videos. Family stuff. Pause. He opened a terminal window, ran some scripts, watched lines of code scroll. One of the spoofed call origins bounces through 3 proxies but resolves to a server box registered in King County, Seattle metro area. Whoever's running this is either local or was local and left a trail. We drove back to Seattle together in my car that same evening. The 2-hour trip up I-5 was tense, filled with pockets of heavy silence interrupted by sudden questions. "Did he ever talk about me?" Michael asked once, staring out at the dark shapes of evergreens whipping past in the rain. "Not once," I answered honestly. "Not a single word. I didn't even know you existed until the letters." He nodded, jaw tight, and didn't speak again for 20 miles. Pause. When we reached my Capitol Hill apartment, we turned the dining table into an evidence board. Sarah's yellowed love letters laid out in chronological order. Bank statements with monthly transfers circled in red ink. Frank the Pie's typed reports stacked in a neat pile. The scratched Polaroid of me and Dad at the Mariners game, Mom's face violently erased. Michael picked up the photo, studied the jagged gouges where her smile used to be. "This wasn't me," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I never hated her. She didn't choose any of this shit. She was just caught in his mess like the rest of us." Pause. Something in the way he said it, raw, unguarded, made the knot of anger I'd carried toward him loosen just a fraction. We needed more concrete leads. The warehouse was next. The condemned industrial building downtown where the payphone trace had pointed. We went at 2:17 a.m., Michael's idea to pick an odd time in case anyone's watching for patterns. We parked 2 blocks away, walked in through an alley that smelled of piss and rotting garbage. Flashlights cut narrow beams through the boarded windows. Michael used a crowbar from his truck toolbox to pop the rusted chain on the side door. The link snapped with a sharp metallic crack that echoed too loudly in the quiet night. Pause. Inside, the air was cold and damp, thick with the smell of mildew, old motor oil, and something faintly metallic, maybe rust, maybe old blood. Broken glass crunched under our boots like brittle ice. We moved carefully through darkened corridors lined with abandoned machinery, shadows jumping in our flashlight beams. Found the payphone bolted to a concrete wall in a forgotten hallway, receiver dangling by its cord, the cord itself sliced clean through with wire cutters. Pause. Nearby, a tall metal cabinet, green paint flaking off in curls. Michael wedged the crowbar under the latch and pried. The door screeched open. Inside, neat stacks of cassette tapes, each labeled in careful blue ballpoint handwriting. Dates from 1987 to 1995. TH and SM, Motel 6, 6/12/89. Argument, Money and Promises, 11/03/90. Lullaby, age 2, 1991. My initials, Alex Harlan. Mom singing "You Are My Sunshine" to toddler me in a soft, sleepy voice. Dad arguing with Sarah about late payments. Whispered love talk in motel rooms. Fights about telling Mom. Intimate, private moments captured and preserved like evidence in a cold case. Pause. Someone had been archiving our family secrets for decades, hoarding audio the way a killer keeps trophies. Behind the tapes, shoved to the back of the shelf, an older model laptop. Dust thick on the lid, screen dark. Michael opened it. The battery still had a faint charge. Password prompt. He tried variations. Sarah's full name, her birth date from the obituary, combinations with Michael's birth year. Sarah Forever 88 unlocked it on the 4th try. Desktop cluttered, folders labeled voice models Mom, voice models Dad, scripts Phase 1, scripts Phase 2 confrontation, endgame estate. Audio files numbered by date, some over an hour long. Scripts typed out word for word, what the voices had said to us, timestamps matching our call logs down to the second. A master text file buried in the root directory, bullet point plan. Phase 1, isolate targets with personal memories. Build fear. Phase 2, reveal partial truths, letters affair to seed distrust. Phase 3, force direct confrontation over inheritance. Escalate to physical evidence drops FOD. Endgame, they destroy each other emotionally, financially. Estate enters probate contest. File wrongful death civil suit on behalf of SM for damages. Initials at the bottom in bold, RT Pause, Robert Thompson. Sarah's older brother. The uncle I'd never met, never even heard mentioned at family dinners. We spent the rest of that night and the next morning digging deeper from my apartment. Coffee brewing constantly, mugs piling up in the sink. Public records search showed Robert living in a modest single-story house in Renton, quiet cul-de-sac near Jean Coulon Memorial Beach Park. Retired Air Force mechanic, honorable discharge 2001. medical summaries leaked through public court databases, treatment for major depressive disorder and PTSD starting 1996, 1 year after Sarah's crash. Old Usenet-style forum posts under his username from the early 2000s, long rants about justice denied, corrupt accident investigations, that bastard Harlan got away with murder and walked free with a new life. Pause, we decided surveillance. 3 full days of stakeout in Michael's truck, parked 2 blocks away on a side street with a clear line of sight. Day 1. Robert emerged at 10:14 a.m. wearing a faded Carhartt jacket, walked to the corner grocery, returned with 2 plastic bags, canned soup, bread, cigarettes. Smoked 3 on the porch, staring at the street like he was waiting for someone who never came. Day 2, same morning routine plus a trip to the local hardware store, purchased duct tape, nylon rope, extra flashlight batteries, box cutter. Returned home, stayed inside until dusk. Day 3, longer porch sit, chain smoking, cell phone pressed to his ear, gesturing angrily with his free hand, voice too low to catch words but tone unmistakably furious. 4th night he left the house at 8:42 p.m., drove to a dive bar on Rainier Avenue South called the Rusty Anchor, neon sign flickering, pickup trucks in the lot. We waited exactly 11 minutes after his taillights disappeared, then approached on foot through the back alley. The rear door was unlocked, careless or perhaps deliberate bait. We slipped inside. The house was dark, musty, heavy with the smell of cigarette smoke and unwashed laundry. Walls papered floor to ceiling with photographs and red string connecting them like a conspiracy board. Dad's face circled repeatedly in marker. Candid shots of me walking into my old office building, taken months earlier from across the street. Grainy yearbook photo of Michael as a teenager. Timelines pinned with thumbtacks. Affair begins summer 1987, right arrow. Michael's birth March 1988, right arrow. Sarah's pregnancy complications. 1990, right arrow. Dad's payments taper. Off 1994, right arrow. Crash March 17, 1995. Pause in the bedroom. A small shrine. Sarah's high school senior photo in a cheap gold frame, surrounded by votive candles burned down to stubs, dried rose petals scattered across the dresser like blood drops. The tech room was off the hallway, a converted spare bedroom. Desktop computer humming quietly under a desk, dual monitors, screensaver showing an empty rain-slick highway at night. Voice synthesis software open in multiple windows, profiles labeled Alina Harlan, mom, 87% accuracy. Thomas Harlan, dad, 92% accuracy. We plugged in a thumb drive, started copying folders as fast as the old USB ports would allow. My hands shook, Michael's breathing was shallow and rapid beside me. Pause, then we heard the front door, keys jingling, boots scuffing the entry mat. He was back early. Drunk, we could smell the whiskey from the hallway. He stumbled in, muttering under his breath, "They'll pay. Both little shits think they can just take what's left." He dropped his keys on the hall table with a clatter, shuffled into the tech room, sat heavily in the office chair, started typing. Pause, we retreated silently into the hallway closet, burying ourselves among old winter coats that reeked of mothballs and stale cigarette smoke. The door clicked shut. Darkness swallowed us. Michael's arm pressed against mine. I could feel his heart hammering through his sleeve. Minutes dragged. 5, 10. Robert typed in fits and starts, occasionally muttering curses at the screen. Then sharp, uncontrollable Michael sneezed. The sound exploded in the confined space like a gunshot. Robert spun in the chair so fast it squealed on its casters. The revolver came out of the desk drawer in one fluid motion, old military issue .38, matte black finish, hammer already cocked. "Who's there?" he barked, voice slurred but steady enough to terrify. "Come out slow or I start shooting through the goddamn door." Pause, we had no choice. Hands raised, palms out, we stepped into the light. He recognized us instantly. A bitter, broken laugh escaped his cracked lips. The Harlan boys. Finally grew some balls and came to face me. Pause, he kept the gun trained on Michael's chest while he talked, for 23 minutes by the clock on the wall. Confessed everything in a rush of rage and whiskey. Learned basic AI voice tools during the long lockdown winters. Found the old cassette collection in Sarah's storage unit after the funeral, forgotten boxes she'd never unpacked. Spent years digitizing, training models, refining. The goal, make us hate each other so viciously we'd end up in court fighting over the estate. Then he'd file the civil wrongful death suit against Dad's estate on Sarah's behalf, claim Dad deliberately tampered with her brakes after she threatened to tell Mom the full truth about the affair and the child. "I have the original mechanic's report from '95, he said, waving the gun toward a filing cabinet. Brake lines cut clean. Police notes suppressed because your father had friends on the force. He left her bleeding out in that ravine. Alone, I know it in my bones. Pause, we saw the files when he gestured, yellowed Polaroids of rusted brake lines with clean cuts, faded police report pages stamped, closed, accidental. The room exploded into motion. Michael lunged first, pure rage propelling him across the carpet. Grabbed for the revolver. Robert jerked back. The gun discharged once, deafening in the small space, plastered dust raining from the ceiling like dirty snow, the overhead light fixture swinging wildly. I dove in from the side, tackled Robert around the waist. We crashed into the desk, monitors toppled. The revolver skittered under the bed. Fists flew in a frantic blur, Robert clawed at my face, nails raking bloody lines down my cheek. Michael pinned his arms from behind. Robert thrashed like a trapped animal, snarling curses. Pause outside, porch lights snapped on up and down the street. A neighbor's dog barked furiously. Sirens rose in the distance, faint at first, then closer, red and blue flashes pulsing through the front windows. We bolted. Out the back door, over the chain-link fence into the neighbor's yard, through wet grass and flower beds, lungs burning with cold night air. Jumped into Michael's truck 2 streets over. He floored it, tires spinning on wet pavement before catching traction. We ditched the truck in a grocery store lot 3 miles away, wiped down the interior with our sleeves, walked back to my car parked blocks earlier. Sat in silence as adrenaline crashed into shaking nausea. Neither of us spoke until we were back on I-5 heading north, rain lashing the windshield. Police picked Robert up at 7:19 a.m. the next morning. Neighbors' 911 call about the gunshot triggered a welfare check that turned into an arrest. Detectives questioned him at Renton PD. He confessed quickly to the harassment campaign, the stalking, the use of AI voice impersonation software. Denied any intent to cause physical harm or any involvement in Sarah's crash beyond his long-held suspicions. It was justice, he told them, voice flat on the recording we later obtained through Frank. They deserved to feel erased, like she was. Pause, the detectives questioned us separately later that day. I gave a full statement at Seattle PD, handed over duplicate recordings, thumb drive copies of the warehouse laptop files. Michael did the same in Portland. They seemed satisfied, enough for felony harassment, stalking, cyber impersonation charges. The wrongful death angle stayed speculative. No new evidence tied Dad directly to break tampering beyond Robert's claims. Case appeared to be wrapping. But at 12:03 a.m. 2 nights later, alone in my darkened apartment, my phone lit up on the nightstand. Blocked caller. I answered with numb fingers. Mom's voice came through, calm and almost sorrowful. "It's not over yet, Alex. Ask Michael about the nursing home visits. Ask what he did to your father the last time he saw him alive." Pause, I met Michael at a 24-hour diner off I-5 just before dawn, rain still falling, windows fogged, smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon heavy in the air. Over plates of untouched eggs and cooling mugs, I asked the question straight. He broke completely, shoulders shaking, tears dropping into his untouched food. Admitted the 3 visits to Dad's nursing home in the final month. Each time demanding more money, threatening to go public with the affair if Dad didn't pay up. The last visit, Dad, weak in the hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, said no. Called Michael greedy. Said the past was dead and buried. Michael left furious. Stopped at a corner pharmacy on the way out. Bought over-the-counter sugar pills that looked close enough to Dad's blood pressure medication. Swapped them out during a later visit when the nurse stepped away. Thought it would spike Dad's pressure, scare him into writing a check. Didn't expect the full cardiac event 2 days later. Dad alone in his room when the monitor flatlined. Pause, I swear to God I didn't want him dead, Michael whispered, voice cracking. Just weaker, just scared enough to give in. I didn't think it would kill him. The betrayal landed like a physical punch to the sternum, sharp, breathless pain that spread outward. My half-brother, the one person I'd started to see as a reluctant ally, had killed our father. For money, for revenge, for a lifetime of abandonment turned toxic. Pause, I drove home in silence, rain blurring the world outside the windshield. Called the anonymous police tip line from a burner app on my phone. Sent them zipped files, recordings, pie notes, nursing home visitor logs Frank had quietly pulled weeks earlier. Michael was arrested 48 hours later at the garage, handcuffed in front of stunned coworkers, head bowed as the officers read him his rights in the oily bay. Manslaughter. Evidence tampering. Conspiracy to commit fraud. That night the voice called one final time. Soft, almost proud. You did the right thing, Alex. Now you have to live with what you've learned, all of it. Then silence. True, complete silence for the first time in months. Pause, but the weight of everything we'd uncovered stayed. Heavy, permanent, a shadow that followed me into every quiet room. After Michael's arrest and Robert's conviction, the nights finally became quiet again. Pause, no more rings cutting through the darkness at precisely midnight. No more voices, Mom's soft Georgia cadence, Dad's clipped gravel tone, emerging from the phone like echoes trapped in old wires. Just the steady, almost rhythmic patter of Pacific Northwest rain on the roof and windows, the low sigh of the refrigerator compressor kicking on in the kitchen at predictable intervals, the faint wooden creak of the house frame contracting as outdoor temperatures dropped after sunset. My own breathing, slow inhales through the nose, longer controlled exhales through slightly parted lips, became the dominant sound in the room. Sometimes it felt too loud, too present, as if my body had to remind itself it was still here after everything else had gone silent. For the first 31 days, I barely left the Capitol Hill apartment. I remained mostly on the same worn leather couch where the first call had arrived that rainy October Tuesday night. The couch still carried faint traces of spilled bourbon and the sharp, metallic scent of fierce sweat from months of pacing. The phone sat on the low coffee table directly in front of me, plugged into its charger, screen facing up, ringer volume set to maximum, do not disturb disabled. I conducted a nightly test of my own resolve. At 11:58 p.m., my pulse would climb unbidden, heart rate jumping from resting 68 to 92, sometimes 98 in under 30 seconds. I would stare at the blank black glass, willing it to glow, half in dread, half in a strange, perverse anticipation. At 12:01 a.m., I would exhale fully, shoulders dropping perhaps half an inch, the tension bleeding out like air from a slow-leaking tire. The silence was heavier than any ringtone had ever been. It was absence made physical, a weight pressing on the chest. Pause, I replayed the calls entirely from memory, not from the audio files I had deleted after turning copies over to detectives, but from the neural grooves they had carved inside my skull. Mom saying my name with that tiny upward inflection on the X that always signaled concern. Dad's low warning to Michael, "Don't trust him, son." The final transmission, "You did the right thing, Alex. Now live with what you've learned." That last sentence lingered longest, repeating on a loop during quiet moments like a song you can't unhear. I still wrestle with whether turning Michael in was truly right. He ended our father's life, accidental or intentional, the outcome was the same. But allowing him to walk free after deliberately swapping those blood pressure pills would have made me an accessory after the fact, complicit in covering up a death. Or so I repeated to myself in the dark. I moved out on day 32. Packing happened in deliberate slow motion. Cardboard boxes sourced from the liquor store 3 blocks away, labeled in black Sharpie with short, dispassionate phrases. Kitchen, pots, pans, utensils. Clothes, winter coats. Books, fiction, nonfiction. Misc, photos, documents, keepsakes. I left the couch behind for the next tenant. It carried too many hours of whiskey-fueled pacing and whispered one-sided conversations with dead voices. The new rental was a modest single-story house in Tacoma's Ruston Way neighborhood, close enough to the waterfront that on clear nights I could hear the low, mournful horns of container ships navigating Commencement Bay. Gray clapboard siding, weathered by salt air, narrow front porch with a single weathered wicker chair, windows facing west across the water, where fog often rolled in thick enough to erase the Olympic Mountains on the far shore. Rent was $300 less per month than Capitol Hill. The street was quieter, no late-night bar crowds, no frequent sirens. Fewer neighbors who might have caught the brief local news segment about the Seattle area family impersonation and manslaughter case and recognized my face in passing. Pause, I welcomed the distance. The wide gray expanse of the Sound felt like a purposeful boundary, cold water and distance between me and the abandoned warehouse downtown, Robert's candlelit shrine in Renton, the Bellevue attic where yellowed envelopes had waited decades to be discovered under a loose floorboard. Unpacking stretched over 5 days because I refused to rush it. Each box felt like lifting a layer of scar tissue. In the Misc box, I found Mom's old photo album, the one with the cracked brown leather cover she used to keep on the living room coffee table for Sunday afternoons. I sat on the bare hardwood floor of the new living room, back against the unpainted wall, knees drawn up, and opened it page by page in the slanting afternoon light. Me at 5 on a red tricycle with training wheels, gap-toothed grin wide enough to show missing front teeth. Me at 10 with the green fiberglass cast on my broken right forearm, holding a melting chocolate ice cream cone Dad had bought on the way home from urgent care as a peace offering for not being there when I crashed the bike. Mom and Dad at Christmas 1998 posed stiffly in front of a lopsided tree decorated with mismatched glass ornaments and strings of popcorn garland. I stared at each image until the light shifted from pale afternoon gray to evening blue-gray through the window. I didn't cry. Tears would have been too simple, too cleansing. Instead, I felt a hollow ache behind the sternum, as if someone had reached in and removed everything soft, leaving only the scaffolding of ribs and resolve. Pause, I kept only 3 photographs. One of Mom alone in her garden kneeling beside rose bushes, sun on her hair. One of me and Dad at the Mariners game in 1999, before someone, Robert, later scratched Mom's face out of a duplicate copy. And one of the 3 of us at my high school graduation, Mom's arm around my shoulders, Dad standing slightly apart but smiling. The rest went into a plain banker's box labeled Past Storage, Do Not Open. I carried it to the crawl space under the house, pushed it against the far fiberglass insulation bat, closed the hatch with a soft click. Out of sight, not destroyed. I began therapy 17 days after settling into coma. Dr. Ellis practiced in a converted Victorian house near Wright Park, tall windows with sheer curtains, soft beige walls, bookshelves heavy with volumes on trauma, attachment theory, complicated grief, and post-betrayal recovery. A small tabletop fountain bubbled continuously in the corner, intended to be calming, but usually reminding me how urgently full my bladder felt by the end of each 50-minute hour. First session, I sat in the upholstered client chair opposite her desk, hands clasped tightly between my knees, and waited for her to begin. She didn't rush. She simply sat with her yellow legal pad on her lap, pen uncapped but motionless. Pause whenever you feel ready, she said quietly, voice low and unhurried. I started with October 22, the rainy Tuesday night, the blocked caller ID lighting up at midnight, Mom's voice saying, "Your father isn't who you think he is." I described the cheap bourbon, the pacing barefoot on cold laminate, the 3 a.m. deepfake research rabbit hole. I moved to the attic discovery, the letters from Sarah, Michael opening his apartment door shirtless and wet from the shower, Robert's revolver glinting under fluorescent light, the plaster dust falling like dirty snow after the shot, Michael's tearful confession over cold diner eggs and cooling coffee. When I reached the final silence, I stopped. Dr. Ellis waited a full 10 seconds, long enough for the fountain's trickle to fill the gap. "Do you believe those voices were genuinely your parents attempting to reach you from beyond?" she asked. I looked at the fountain instead of her face, watched the water ripple endlessly. "I don't know," I answered after almost a minute. Part of me wants it to have been Mom, some surviving fragment of her still trying to protect me or force the truth into the open before it poisoned everything else. Part of me knows it was Robert's software, trained on old cassettes, running on a laptop in a dark Renton bedroom. Most days I exist somewhere between those poles. The voices were real enough to dismantle my entire understanding of family, and that reality is what I have to carry now. She nodded once. Did not write anything down immediately. Simply let the statement exist between us without judgment. We continued weekly, Tuesdays at 3:00 p.m. She never forced catharsis or dramatic emotional releases. She listened as I circled the same core wounds. The guilt that gnawed when I thought about turning Michael in, he was blood, broken by the same man who broke me in quieter ways. The anger at Dad that flared unpredictably. Why was one family never enough? Why did he let Mom live with half a husband while he maintained another life in secret? The sharpened grief for Mom. Did she smell unfamiliar perfume on his collars? Did she notice unexplained mileage on the odometer? Did she ever drive past the motels mentioned in the letters? Why did she choose silence over confrontation, or at least disclosure before the cancer stole her voice? Pause in session 8, I brought the lullaby cassette. Played it on a small portable tape deck purchased secondhand from a Tacoma pawn shop. Mom's voice, younger, softer, tired from a long day but full of uncomplicated love, filled the quiet office. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Dr. Ellis let the song run to its end without interruption. When the tape hissed into silence, she asked gently, "What is different about hearing her real voice now, compared to the voice that called you at midnight?" Pause, it feels safe, I said. Warm, human. The midnight voice sounded exactly like her but never felt like her. It was cold. Manipulative, this is the last piece of her that's still alive in the world. Long pause, she wrote one word on her pad in neat script, "Anchor." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. I began visiting Mom's grave every Sunday afternoon, regardless of weather unless it was truly dangerous. The cemetery lay 35 minutes east on winding roads through second-growth forest. I always stopped at the same roadside lavender farm stand, $8 for a small fresh bundle tied with rough twine. The scent hit me the moment I opened the car door. Clean, herbal, faintly sweet, instantly transporting me to Mom's garden in Bellevue where she knelt in dirt planting starts, sun on her shoulders. I walked the gravel path to her plot. Section C, row 17, plot 42, placed the lavender against the smooth granite headstone, sat cross-legged on the grass even when it soaked through my jeans. Pause, I spoke to her a loud, ordinary conversation as if she were sitting beside me on the couch with tea. Told her about the Tacoma house, the way morning fog muffles the ship horns until they sound like distant whale calls. About therapy and how Dr. Ellis never pushes but always listens. About burning the letters in the coffee can and how the smoke smelled faintly like incense. Ask the questions that had no living answers. Did you ever suspect the late nights weren't work conferences? Did you notice the extra quiet when he came home? Did you stay for me for the illusion of a complete family, or because leaving felt impossible? Did the cancer feel like a release from secrets you couldn't speak? Pause, sometimes tears came quietly, dripping onto the grass to disappear. Sometimes I simply sat in silence, listening to wind move through the cedars, a crow scolding from a nearby branch, the distant drone of a lawnmower cutting another family's memories. No voices answered. No signs appeared, no sudden breeze, no butterfly landing on the stone. But the act of returning, of asking, of sitting with the unknown, slowly loosened the knot behind my sternum. Long pause, I forgave her there, for whatever she knew and carried alone. For choosing silence over rupture. For loving me enough to keep my childhood world intact while hers quietly fractured. I forgave Dad for his weakness, his selfishness, his inability to choose integrity over convenience. Forgave Michael for letting abandonment curdle into murder. Forgave Robert for allowing grief to metastasize into calculated cruelty. And most difficult of all, I began forgiving myself for living blind to the cracks, for not questioning sooner, for inheriting a legacy of silence I never asked for. The letters came after the grave visits became routine. I wrote them over 7 weeks, one every 4 or 5 nights when the house felt too still. Kitchen table under the single pendant lamp, yellow legal pad, black gel pen, no music playing. Pause first to Michael, address obtained through a discreet query to Frank the Pie. Michael, I understand the rage better than I want to. The years of being the invisible son while I got birthday parties and piano lessons, the foster homes, the beatings, the knowledge that Dad chose comfort over you, but swapping those pills wasn't justice. It was erasure. You took the last piece of him from both of us. I don't hate you. I can't forgive you yet. Maybe someday. I hope prison gives you something, anger management, therapy, a way to see yourself as more than what he made you. I hope you find peace. Alex, I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, mailed it the next morning from the post office near the waterfront. Pause to Robert, sent to the correctional facility, address from court records. Robert, you lost your sister. I lost my mother without ever understanding why she faded so early, why she seemed to carry an invisible weight. We were both robbed by the same man, but you turned that pain into a weapon. You used technology to mimic the dead, to pit 2 brothers against each other like gladiators for your satisfaction. That's where our paths split forever. I hope you find a way to grieve without destroying. Alex Harlan, to Dad, never sent, only burned. Dad, why wasn't one family enough? Why did you split yourself between 2 lives and leave both bleeding? I keep searching the memories for the man who taught me to ride a bike without training wheels, who brought ice cream after the arm break, who smiled at my graduation. I want to hold on to him. But the other man, the one who wrote secret letters, who paid hush money, who let Mom die wondering, keeps overriding him. I'm trying to separate you into pieces. I'm trying to forgive the good parts. It's hard. Your son, to Sarah, burned unread by anyone else. Sarah, I'm sorry you got the shadows while I got the sunlight. I didn't know you existed. If I could give back some of the stability you never had, I would. I hope wherever you are, you've found peace. And I hope Michael someday understands you loved him enough to protect him from the truth about his father. Alex, to Mom, longest, burned last. Mom, thank you for the lullabies when I had fevers, for apple pies with extra cinnamon, for staying when it must have hurt every day. I know now there were secrets. Late nights, unexplained absences, silences that lasted too long. I don't blame you for keeping them. You gave me a childhood that felt whole, even if it wasn't. I love you. I miss you every single day. I'm trying to live in a way that honors what you gave me. You're Alex. When each was finished, I carried the pages to the small backyard, placed them in the old coffee can I kept under the porch steps, struck a match, watched flames consume the ink and paper. Smoke rose thin and gray into the night sky, carrying the words upward like released breath. Ashes drifted like pale snow. Each burning felt like exhaling a breath I'd held for decades. Life rebuilt itself in small, almost imperceptible increments. Freelance coding contracts arrived steadily through online platforms, bug fixes for small SaaS startups, automation scripts for local nonprofits, database migrations for a marine supply company down the waterfront. I worked from a second-hand oak desk positioned in front of the bay window, watching ferries glide across the sound, container ships move with slow, deliberate majesty, fog occasionally swallowing the entire horizon. Mornings, I walked the Ruston Way promenade. Salt air sharp and cleansing in my lungs, gulls wheeling overhead with harsh cries, harbor seals breaking the surface with sleek dark heads before disappearing again. I bought a used hybrid bicycle from a shop near Point Defiance, rode the waterfront trail on clear days until my legs burned and my mind emptied. Pause, I spoke with neighbors in passing. Mrs. Delgado next door, who brought over zucchini bread when she saw my moving truck. The retired ferry worker 2 houses down who waved every morning and once shared a thermos of coffee while we watched a cruise ship dock. Small interactions. Human anchors. I read more than ever. Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking, C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed, novels where families splintered under the weight of unspoken truths. I underlined passages that felt like mirrors held up to my own life. I drank tea instead of bourbon, chamomile at night to quiet the mind, peppermint in the afternoon for clarity. Small rituals that signaled the day was ending without dread. The unease never departed entirely. It resided in the quiet corners in the spaces between thoughts. I still woke 3 or 4 nights a week at 11:58 p.m., eyes snapping open, body instantly tense under the blankets. I would reach for the phone on the nightstand, screen dark, hold it in my palm as if its weight could anchor me. Wait, breath shallow held. At 12:01 a.m., I would set it down gently, exhale slowly through pursed lips. The ritual repeated. I never turned the phone off at night, never silenced it, just in case. Pause, I kept the lullaby cassette in the top desk drawer, played it once every 3 or 4 weeks, low volume through headphones, sitting in the dark living room, eyes closed. Mom's real voice filled my ears. Young, tired, uncomplicated love. It anchored me, reminded me there was still something human, something untouched by manipulation, left in the world. Years have passed, though time feels collapsed, yesterday bleeding into forever. I still wonder about the voices. Were they truly mom and dad reaching across the veil, one final act of love or warning or atonement? Was it Robert's software persisting on some forgotten server, algorithms echoing beyond his incarceration? Or was it me, my own mind, fractured under grief and betrayal, weaving guilt and memory into auditory hallucinations that sounded exactly like truth? Pause, I have no definitive answer. I suspect there never will be one. Some questions remain open-ended. Some wounds close but leave raised, sensitive scars you feel when the barometric pressure shifts. Some legacies, silence, secrets, inherited pain, persist like low-frequency hums beneath daily life. If your phone ever rings at midnight and the voice on the other end belongs to someone you buried, someone whose hand you held as their breathing slowed to nothing, answer with care. Listen closely to every syllable, but do not trust it completely. Do not let it pull you back into the dark without scrutiny. Pause the past calls when it chooses. And even after the arrests, the confessions, the ashes in the coffee can, a slender thread of it remains connected. Listening. Waiting. I still check my phone at midnight. Every night, just in case. Pause, and in the silence that always follows, I continue living with everything I've learned. The love that was real, the lies that ran deeper than blood, the forgiveness that softens but never fully erases the marks.